now, and then we can look to just go ahead and get started.
1. Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
I'll be watching your back, but be careful out there. Bless you.
Alright, very nice.
Thanks.
Smoke 'em out of there.
Alright, so besides that pick on Reaper, we're not going to want to stay at this range for long. And we'll just go over, since we're at the very beginning of the game, we'll just leave and go over this real quick.
Oh, okay.
And then that was the map on King's Row, so we'll just go ahead and get back to that when we're done here. But on Ashe, you have what you call fall off damage. Now this is easiest to see when we're using like our left click, because it does less damage, and on body shots here, when we're at this range, right, when we're over here, a lot closer to people, we shoot them and we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots until we kill them. The further and further away we get, the less and less damage we're going to be doing. So now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, no, it's not hitting him. 7, 8, 9. Right.
Okay.
So you're gonna be doing less and less damage the further away we get from people. So we want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves pretty at a medium range, right? Widowmaker, we're not positioning like we would on a Widowmaker, as Widowmaker does not have that fall off damage. Besides that, they actually did add that in recently, but that's a very, very far distance where she will have that fall off. On Ashe, that's a lot closer. So here, 1, 2, 3. Versus we get all the way back. You are standing really, really far away from them, right? So we'll do kind of the max. We're doing half the damage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So first off, you just want to get that ranging proper. So after that, we got that kill on the Reaper. Probably just want to make sure we're getting a lot closer. Now,
that makes sense. So like, yeah, that makes sense, because like even though it looks like she's got this like sniper rifle, you gotta like be a little closer. Okay.
Yep. I'd probably say that Widowmaker is really the only, and Ana to a lesser extent as well, are really the only true snipers in the game. Ashe and Hanzo you could consider snipers, but Hanzo doesn't have a scope, and it's hard for him to be accurate at a range. And then Ashe has fall off, so they're a little bit different.
They pretty much all have fall off except maybe like Widow and maybe like Hanzo or something.
Hanzo doesn't. Certain characters do, certain characters don't. Widowmaker does not have fall off until like 300 meters or something like that. Hanzo does not have fall off at all. Mei does not have fall off. What other snipers? Ana doesn't have fall off. What other characters maybe are there? Tracer does have fall off. McCready has fall off. Soldier, I believe does have, he has have fall off. Most hit scans will have fall off. I don't think that there are, and then most projectile characters do not have fall off. So Pharah does not have fall off. Junkrat does not have fall off. Hanzo doesn't have fall off. But most hit scan characters will.
Okay.
Right. So we get the kill on Reaper, but then we just kind of said this far distance would just mean that on top of the damage fall off, it also means that the shots are just gonna be a little bit harder to hit, right? Just because we're further away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Alright, I like they were pushing forwards now.
Yeah, the tanks did a lot this game.
Okay. Try to do your best not to run straight at a Reaper, right? Like we were discussing, ranges.
If he was better, I guess he probably would have killed me.
Yep, and you know, Ashe is capable of playing at a close range, and she is capable of playing at a long range. But she really is a mid-range character. She likes to play at a mid-range because other characters are just better than her at a close range. Like Reaper, for example, is 10 times better than Ashe when you're right on top of each other, right? So
you kind of like try to zone them out a little bit so that you're like, okay.
So you just want to stand a little bit further back. All right. Now, I think we might leave here and talk about another topic. Just right off the bat here. And this is going to be on your mechanics, which I see that you talked about, struggling with on Fiverr. You were messaging about that. This
Yeah.
is probably going to be one of the biggest things that you could look to improve on in terms of mechanics is crosshair placement. Are you familiar with that
Oh,
term?
okay. Yeah, I think I heard about it from like a video. I guess they were maybe one thing they were saying was like before you take the shot, try to like keep it at a good level, sort of maybe.
Well, I'll elaborate on that end and just make sure you're really concentrating on this because crosshair placement is essentially how you learn to aim, and it is the
Okay.
fundamentals of aiming. I started off at silver. I was a Mercy player. This was my first FPS game that I ever played on PC. I played maybe a tiny little bit of COD on like Xbox with like my brothers when I was like 8, but besides that, not really much, right? So I didn't know how to aim at all, and I'm mainly self-taught. Now, like, I'm not on my main account right now, I'm on my alt account, but even on this one, I peaked like 43 or something like that, right, on DPS.
Uh-huh.
So, basically, I'm mainly self-taught when it comes to aim, right? And this is how you can look to self-teach yourself, is essentially crosshair placement is placing your crosshair in the best possible spot to hit the easiest and most shots. It's using your brain to help your aim. So even for older guys who have lower reaction times, and even if for people who have like trash aim, this is how you can look to just make that just a little bit better with your brain rather than just pure instincts, right?
Okay.
So basically the first major step to this, and why I even brought it up in the first place, is making sure that you are constantly aiming at head level. Headshots do much, much more damage than body shots. 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You're going to be doing a lot more damage if we're hitting headshots, right, versus if we're hitting body shots, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we are hitting headshots or just shots in general. And the easiest way to do this is to make sure we're aiming head level. When we are aiming body level or at the ground, then that means that to hit a headshot, we have to adjust up and to the left or up and to the right. And
Uh-huh.
therefore, our crosshair has to travel a further distance. Anytime my crosshair has to travel a further distance, that means the shot's harder to hit. So if we're crosshairs over here and we're trying to hit this shot, because we have to adjust so far, it's a hard shot to hit. Whereas if we're right here, now the shot's a lot easier to hit because we're already there. So
Okay.
keep our crosshair at this level so we can just go left, right, and then that just is easy shots, right? So now this also means that on spammy characters, which Ashe is decently spammy, she's going to be doing a lot of just damage down a corridor into a team. That means that we're shooting at shields, just shooting at people. Our default shots that we are hitting are now, instead of us turning this corner and hitting body shots, now we are,
Uh-huh.
if we're aiming head level, now all of our default shots are just hitting head level because we're already aiming there.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yep. Now, we don't want to just make sure we're aiming at head level. We also want to aim where we know people are going to be at. So if we know that the bot just walked top right, we're aiming our crosshair top right, a little bit away from the wall at head level so that when they turn the corner, our crosshair's already there. And therefore, it's very, very little adjustment for getting that kill, and therefore it's an easy kill, right?
Okay.
We know they're on our left, so we're pre-aiming head level, left side. Oh, he just walked past us. Okay, pre-aiming right side, right? That way, when we're turning the corner, we're already aiming straight at them.
Got it.
Here, these guys are a little bit slanted downwards, so we're going to look down. This is the same way that you'd look down on a Torbjorn or on a tank. You're going to have to look up a little bit higher because they have a little bit bigger of a hitbox, right? So here we're aiming down a little bit, so that when we turn this corner, it's very little adjustment, and therefore the shot's a lot easier to hit.
Okay.
Right, so we can take that same principles and just take a look at kind of where our crosshairs are pointed. Going back and looking at this.
Ready for battle.
So let's see. Okay, so you can see just here when we see the Reaper walks left room, right? And then we look at where our crosshair's sitting when first off we're aiming at the wall, which we want to be aiming at the doorway because like I said, we want to be aiming where we know people are going to be. Aiming at this wall is not going to do anything for us. We can't shoot through walls, so instead we aim at the doorway at head level. Here we're aiming at not at below his feet, not at head level. on the wall, right? So then when he comes out, we have to adjust really, really far to hit him. Now
Yeah, that
here,
makes sense.
yep, here you can see how our crosshairs now again not at his head; it's kind of more towards his chest.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And then every single shot we take is just kind of like a flick upwards. Right? You can
Yeah,
see.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as you watch, you'll keep noticing is that we just constantly are looking at the floor, right? And then that just means that shots are gonna be a lot harder for you to hit. Right.
Okay.
So now, of course, that's gonna be something that's probably gonna keep up for the rest of the
Right.
whole thing. So I'm gonna try my best to not go too much into that anymore. Though, just keep in mind that is gonna be a very major thing. We're gonna try to do our
Okay.
best to move on from the topic, though.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, no, that's something I like didn't really even think about. So.
All right, so here we want to be pushing up with those guys up front. Now, when we are pushing cart, right, on any payload map along this path, you're going to roughly have 2 fights, right? You have to win 2 fights in a row, essentially, right? If
Okay.
you lose a fight, then you have to fight more. If you stagger them, then you might only have to fight 1 fight. But for the most part, in most instances, you're going to have 2 fights. The first fight's going to happen somewhere along this first half. It depends on where they end up contesting you. It's going to happen somewhere within this stretch here, right? And then the second fight is going to happen somewhere within this last little bit of a stretch here, right? It's either going to happen in this corridor or at the very end here, but it's going to be 2 fights. That does not... Oh, and then same thing over here, right? The first fight happens around this stretch here, and then the second fight happens around this corner or the end, right? So roughly 2 fights. This does not change with the amount of people we have on cart. So therefore, the difference between 3 people and 1 person is not going to be a difference. So we probably only want to have 1 person on cart and send the rest of the people up.
Okay.
What this does is it allows us. These guys right here have a special little name. We call them staggering. They're staggering currently. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes. Yeah.
Essentially, just as a quick recap, right? It means that if they die right now, if we push forwards and kill these guys, that means that they go back to spawn and they died super late. Now, that means that it wastes time off of their time bank, and it allows us to maybe, instead of 2 fights, it might actually get us down to 1 fight, because we wasted so much time. And you'll also find that oftentimes their team's not going to want to wait for them, and they'll start pushing in without them, and therefore that starts a stagger train. So we killed those guys, and then Monkey's dumb, because he's bronze, and he pushes forwards without his team, right? And then now he dies, and then now it does a big old cycle. These guys push forwards after Monkey, right? And then that's what you call stagger train, where it keeps happening. So us pushing forwards and killing these guys is going to be really good for us because it starts that stagger train. But we also want to make sure that we're watching out for this because that same thing can happen to us. And we'll talk about that if the time comes. But right now, basically just want to make sure that we're pushing forwards, not sitting on cart here.
Gotcha.
The times where you can have 3 people on cart is like if you are around this last little stretch here at the end and you're trying to get cart in before they get a second touch, right? That way you can maybe get it in before they get a fight in. That's the time where you can have multiple people on cart. But besides that, no reason to have them on here.
Okay.
Smoke 'em out of there. I need.
Alright. So let's just watch this real quick. So first off, we're a little bit ahead of our team, right? Watch our own positioning.
Yeah.
Second off, I think positioning wise, we'll go over this real quick. So we are 2 minutes and 25 seconds in. Now, of course, we might not be able to finish the whole thing just because, the lower down you go, the more mistakes you're finding in every kind of second of the game.
That's okay. Yeah.
Alright, so coming in here, so what we're about to go over is called positioning, and positioning is where kind of you're standing. When we are standing here, right, and there's 6 enemies right there, they're all shooting at us, ulting at us. It takes us 1, 2, 3 seconds to get behind cover. Now from here, we are incapable of getting shot at, right? Like we discussed before, you're not able to shoot through walls, right? So from here, we are. But in that time it took us to get here, we died because we were out in the open. Therefore, bad positioning is the absence of cover, standing out in the open. On the other hand, if we're standing right here, in half of a second, they start shooting at us. In half of a second, we can duck behind cover, and now they're incapable of shooting at us, right? Same thing, can't see us, right? So,
Yeah.
therefore, good positioning is the usage of cover, right? And there's a ton of different types of cover, right? We can use that. We have slopes. No, you're good. You have slopes. You have kind of pillars that you can use when you're reloading, when you're low health, when you're in between your shots, right? We have corners like that. We have random objects you can use to pay like this, right? They can't shoot us, right? Let them, right? You use pillars, corner, doorway, corner, and then high grounds are going to be fantastic. Usage of cover. There's not really many high grounds on King's Row, but we can talk about them anyways. High grounds are fantastic usage of cover. All of the platform acts as cover. They can see us, now they can't see us. He can see us, now he can't see us, right? We add in a crowd thing. All of high ground acts as natural cover. On top of that, people can't really get up to us too easily, right? So if only about like half the characters in the game can get up to us without using a stairs. But then those characters also need to use abilities, and therefore we can just drop to our team or run away from them, and now they're out of abilities. So a ton more survivability on top of that. And then thirdly, high grounds give us a very, very good visibility, right? In 1 second we can be over here, and then next second we can be over here on the other side of the map. And we can see high ground, we can see below high ground, the front of low ground, we can't really see through high ground too well. We can't see over there too well, right? Gives us a lot more limited of a visibility.
That makes sense.
Right.
Now
On top of that,
entering
even sometimes characters
the
that don't really need high ground can benefit because you can push off the enemy characters that need high ground. Right. So here if we look at this, we're kind of out in the open, right? Not near any cover. There are going to be situations where where you're not going to have cover, but you always want to move from one bit of cover to the next bit of cover. Here we're just kind of sitting out in the open, whereas where Reinhardt's at is a little bit safer. We also, again, like we discussed, we're a mid-range character, and we also probably most of the time want to plop ourselves behind our team, unless, like we talked about at the very beginning, they have like a double shield, and we're trying to go for what you call an off angle. On King's Row, there's not too many of off angles, but right, we instead probably want to be right behind our tanks here.
Okay, thanks.
Fire at will. Hallelujah. Wallirum Awiddick.
Here it comes.
Sterben nicht. Sorry.
Get them off me. Somebody get me some healing.
Barrier no longer exists.
Smoke them out of there.
Alright, so we're low health right now. Good dynamites. I like that we're using dynamites very frequently. That's really good.
Okay.
Yep, dynamites are looking pretty good so far.
Dein Schutzengel ist da.
So one thing I'm noticing is kind of what you call actions per minute. So when you compare a bronze player to a plat player or a bronze player to a diamond player, GM player, anything, right? Anybody at a high rank typically is going to have more actions per minute. Basically, they're doing more often. Here, you'll notice that there's a lot of long periods of time where we'll go without shooting, where we'll just kind of be walking around, not really participating while the fight is happening. Like this fight, for example, you'll notice that, actually, I skipped a little too far back. So we go up to the top right, we shoot. While our team is in the middle of fighting, we're kind of doing a long rotation. Just want to be careful of these when, for example, what we could have done is just coach gun up top here, right? That's a little bit maybe shorter of a route to take. I haven't seen us really use coach gun too often, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but I'll continue on my point. And then we shoot at, like, we shoot once, twice, and then we back up.
Thank you.
which is alright, not too bad, but Ana did heal us, so we maybe didn't need to back up all the way. But then here's where you see the big problem, is we come back here, we shoot a little bit, right? We land the dynamite, and then we just continue to not really do anything at all for the rest of the fight. So you'll notice here we'll kind of count how long we're not doing anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we kind of just had a long break, and I bring it up not just because this is this one time, but also because this has happened. You know, I've seen it happen a couple other times where we'll just go a couple seconds without doing much. So we just want to make sure that we're more often shooting. Where you basically want anytime that you can see an enemy, you should be trying to shoot them. Right? Anytime they're on your screen, you should be shooting, and then reloading when it's needed, reloading when you have an opportunity to. But there's a lot of times where we can see enemies and we just don't shoot. So we just want to make sure that we're doing things more often. When it comes to your coach gun usage, you have basically two main ways that you can use it. We can use it for our own personal mobility, or we can use it to boop an enemy away from us. Specifically, if, like we talked about before, you're not a long range or a short range character. So if you have a short range character on top of you, that can be used to get them off of you. Like if the Reaper was on top of us, we had a good usage of that earlier. But the other thing we can do with it is use it as mobility. So we can look at the ground. Are you familiar with the tech where you look at the ground and that boosts you up? Right.
That before,
Yep. You can use that to get yourself up on high grounds, which we already discussed are very, very good for you. We can use it to just move around faster. We can use it, like if, for example, we're doing this rotation right here. If we're just trying to do this faster, because this whole thing where we went up and then shot like twice and then came back all around this way, that put us out, like while the fight was happening, we were outside of that fight for a really, really long time. So we can use that coach gun to make this faster. So we shoot, coach gun backwards, right? And then now that's just a couple seconds faster, just saves some time. We haven't really used it much, so just look to use it a little bit more often just for mobility and getting around. But so far, I think dynamite usage has been pretty solid, probably one of the more solid parts of our kit. And then this is our first bob, which just, in general, when you're charging a bob this slowly, just goes to show that we're maybe not doing enough. We're not really shooting enough. We're not doing enough damage. So we just want to make sure that we're doing things more often.
Yeah, how long would you normally get one, like, I don't know, like a couple, like once per fight or something like that?
Yeah, it really depends on the ultimate, and it really depends on like kind of what rank we're talking with. Because I would imagine the difference between a bronze and GM game would be GM, you maybe people are getting it once a fight or once every fight and a half, and then bronze you're maybe getting it once every 2 or 3 fights. And I probably say on average, up like throughout most ranks, I probably say every 2 fights, you'll get one. But that's going to go down a little bit at a bronze level, because I think we've now gone through 3, 4 fights. It's been a couple minutes so far. So
okay, yeah.
Right, because we had 1 fight on first point, we had 2 fights. So okay, so 3 fights, right? So and then we got it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're coming up the high ground. That's good. Just want to make sure we're shooting at stuff, right? You can see kind of like more delay where we're just kind of sitting there, where we can see stuff and we're just kind of hesitating on the shooting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Open it up. Good.
Yeah, just be a little more like less hesitant.
Yep. In general, hesitation is a inherently negative thing to have, because hesitation can turn good mistakes into bad, or sorry, not good mistakes. That doesn't make sense. Can turn good decisions into now bad decisions, and it can turn bad decisions into worse decisions. So in general, hesitation is usually going to be a negative variable to have. So you always want to try to get rid of hesitation, because then you just, instead of having a good mistake and a bad mistake, you now have a good mistake, a bad mistake, and hesitation, which just completely throws it off, right? So
yeah.
just hesitation in general I want to get rid of. You can open up here with a dynamite. That way you just get some good damage in before you begin. Just that's an ability that you pretty much are using off cooldown every time you get that thing, because it's going to be a really good source of Bob charge. I like that we have so far used it. Just want to keep that up and being consistent with it.
That's a good point though. Like, oh yeah, I didn't realize the McCree had done like a high noon right there, so that was a little bit. Yeah.
Yep. Which is going to come in on awareness and making sure we're, first off, looking, but then also keeping our ears open. Now, I think this is a good topic to go over. Is basically, how can you look to focus on awareness, right? Because awareness, it sounds like it's a pretty weird thing to try to get better at, and it's like kind of vague on how you get better at it. And this stuff I'm about to say is probably going to be very useful for someone, like, because no offense meant, but this is the reasoning behind not being able to improve after 4 stars in bronze, right?
Right.
When it comes to getting better at really anything, it comes down to making sure we're focusing on it while we're playing. The biggest way that you don't improve is to autopilot while you play, or just to focus on winning, or to not really be thinking while you're playing. How you improve at something. So let's take awareness, for example. Is we go while we're playing awareness, right? And we're giving ourselves constant reminders, and we're really focusing in on awareness. And when we do that, you'll start to notice that your awareness is a little bit better. When we're constantly, there's a lot of things that go into awareness, but we're constantly looking around us, when we're constantly listening, right? We'll notice that we're paying attention to more things. Therefore, when we have a higher awareness, a higher good awareness will also lead into better decision making. You cannot make good decisions without knowing what's happening around you. Right here, we cannot make the decision to duck behind cover unless we know that McCree is high nooning. But when you'll notice that when you start to really focus in on it, you'll start to do better. And when you do better over a longer period of time, that'll start to form as a habit. And once a habit has formed, you now no longer have to dedicate so much brain power to it, and you can look to move on to a different thing. Like we can look to move on to ultimate usage or positioning, right? So in general, make sure as well that you're not, because we're going to be going over a ton of stuff here. You don't want to focus on 20 things at once, because that's going to get you overwhelmed. You're not going to know where to start. Instead, focus on kind of 1 to 3 things, right? Take it slow, look to really, really focus in and make sure you're not all autopiloting while you play. But in general here with awareness, just make sure we're listening, make sure we're looking, right, Adam, so that we're aware of what's happening around us.
Okay, got it.
Whenever, probably say that a really, really good way to self-improve and to kind of look at your and to get better on your own is to look at your deaths, because deaths are very obviously big mistakes. When you die, you lose a ton of value. You end up putting your team down people, and you can't do anything. So very, very obviously, deaths are bad, right? Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
But that also means that it's a very, very good thing to look to improve off of. If we can cut down on our deaths, that means that we're doing more, right?
Yeah.
So look at how you die. Go, okay, was I out of position? Was I not being aware? Did I use my abilities wrong? All right, you can be thinking through all these different things, and if you figure out the reason, now you can look to, improve off of that, right? The first step to fixing mistakes is to identify what the mistake is in the first place.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. It was like just after the awareness comment, the random trap. Yeah.
I stick up for my crew.
All right. So make sure that you are being aware of your movement. So when you are moving around with your this is a little bit of a, I'm gonna leave to go over this, and this is a little bit of a very tricky concept to get for.
Okay.
So we're at 425. But make sure that you're paying attention to how your body is moving while you're playing. If
Okay.
we are not paying attention to how we're moving, right, and we're looking straight at this person and we move to the right, well, now our crosshair's here, right?
Yeah.
If we are right here and we're trying to aim to this person's head and we're moving to the right, well, now our crosshair's over here, right? So if we're not paying attention to how we're moving and left and right, then we're going to end up over adjusting or under adjusting, right? If we're moving left while we're aiming right side, then now we're not really going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
want to make sure that you're paying attention to it so that we can adjust our crosshair in the opposite direction here, so that we can keep our crosshair on top of their head even though we're moving around, right? So
Yeah.
here what ends up happening is we go on the Ana, and it's going to be a little bit subtle, so you just pay close attention here, is when we go on the Ana and we start shooting at her, let's go back and find where we were at. So we shoot at the Mercy. Okay, going to aim at the Ana. We have our crosshair on top of her, and then we move to the right, and our shot goes to the right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a good tip because sometimes I do the little aim things and I can like hit things, and then in the game I like can't hit anything, and sometimes I was like, oh, maybe it's nerves or something, but that probably makes sense. It's like I'm not adjusting for myself trying to like dodge out of their shots and stuff.
Yep.
So.
Which I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not saying stand still, because that's also a very bad thing to do. It's going to make it super easy to get shot at. But you want to find a balance where you're moving around, but you're also paying attention to how you're moving, so you're not just completely throwing yourself out of sync or out of rhythm, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So here they've backed up a little bit. We can maybe look to reposition up here, which might give us some better line of sight on some people and give us some good sight lines. And then I think we're going to talk about ult usage in a moment. Okay, so we actually do this. Very nice, very nice. Okay, we look to use Bob. Probably say just slightly late though. So
Okay.
in general, when it comes to ult usage, first off, we don't want to hold on to our ultimates, right? We want to make sure that we're using them usually in the first fight that we get them, unless you see that the fight was won or the fight was lost. You want to use it once you get it. You don't want to hold on to it for multiple fights in a row, because you could be charging up multiple ultimates in that time. The other thing is you want to make sure you're using your ultimates at the very beginning of fights. If we look to use our Bob, for example, and let's say the enemy team, this is a good example to, or analogy to go over this, or illustration, is to say the enemy team has a Bob, right? And they use Bob before you use Bob. Now, Bob is in there being a distraction, getting kills, putting out damage, and therefore they are at an advantage. If we throw out Bob after that, now our Bob is getting damage and being a distraction, but we have less people alive on our team, and therefore, they're, even if they're alive, now they have damage in them, and they can't play as aggressive, and then that means that they can't follow up or capitalize on our Bob as well. And even let's say our Bob gets the same amount of kills as their Bob, well, now look at that, like we could have had we could have been up kills, but now we're just even on kills, right? So in general, ultimates that are used first get more value. So you don't want to use it so early that we use it before our team is ready, but we want to use it at the very beginning of fights, as soon as both teams start to kind of clash a little bit. On top of that, if we use ults too late, that could also mean that we end up just losing it before we get a chance to use our ult, and then that means that we end up being forced to hold on to it longer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yep. Besides that, I think the Bob placement's pretty decent there.
I kind of try to get it like sort of I don't know, like a funny angle or something, so they have to choose where they put their shield, sort of.
Exactly, that's what you're looking to do. That's called a crossfire effect. So if our team is shooting at them from this way, you always kind of want to put it behind them or to the side of them, preferably behind them if you can get it. So if our team's shooting at them this way, and Bob's like standing right here, right, and Bob's shooting at them from behind, well, now they have to choose and go, okay, well, who do we look at? Do we look at Bob, or do we look at the team? If they put everybody on our team, then Bob shreds them from behind. If they put everyone on Bob, that means that our team runs through them. And if they split their attention half and half, that means that they're just less efficient on whichever angle they go. And they're also, because they're not communicating effectively, they're going to end up being, this is just going to be basically a chaos inducer. They're not really going to know what to do. And overall, being on making a crossfire effect does a whole lot for you. That's exactly why you going on off angles when they have double shield would be really good, is because it gets you around the shields. It gets you, and even when they're not on double shields, when they just have one shield, it gets you around the tanks, it gets you around the shields, and it gets you to where you're creating a crossfire effect, and they have to choose, do we look at Ashe or do we look at the team? And that means that both of you have less pressure.
Okay.
Really good.
Double kill.
All right.
Null boost administered.
All right. When we're about to cap point, where's the one place that the enemy team has to go?
Oh, right to the point.
Right. Where's
right to the part.
Therefore, when the enemy team has to go to cart, where's the most dangerous place for us to be standing?
Oh, right by the cart.
Yep. So instead, we could be a little bit further back. We could be where Anna's at. I'd probably say the best place we could be would be top left, as this gives us a view over everything here. Very good visibility, very fantastic survivability. Top right's okay, but it gives us a little bit less visibility to work with. And then we can't really move back as easily. So just in general here, be on a high ground or be sitting back main here. You don't want to be sitting on cart, because that makes it a little bit dangerous for us. Now let's see. And they don't touch. Skip.
My bit and under better circumstances.
One.
Right.
Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
Enemy contact.
All right. So we just made the. So we dropped off high ground, wanted to go back, and then missed it.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I was like, oh no, I'm in a tree. Yeah.
All right. Make sure that you're not getting too close here to them. Put yourself kind of at a more medium distance. Pay attention to the crosshair placement here, right? This shot, like we're aiming kind of like at their shoulders, right? This shot on them just hits a headshot if we're aiming head level. On top of that, we're just kind of in a really exposed position where they could dive. They have a half dive here, right? They have dive tanks. They could very easily dive us here. They could very easily.
I think like a lot of times I don't realize that I'm not like that I'm so far away from my team, so I'll try to pay more attention to that.
Yep. The only times that you really need to be with your team is if they have flankers or dive characters. So that's where we get into making sure that's not really something we went over too much in the session, but you want to make sure that you're paying attention to team compositions, because team compositions dictate your play style. We talked about that at the very beginning when we talked about double shield, but we're going to be playing vastly different when we're on double shield than when they're on a dive composition. When they have something that can get on us in half of a second, like Monkey or Ball, right? We want to make sure we're not off on our own, right? Or Tracer or Genji or Doomfist or anything, or Echo, right? Anything that can get on us. We don't want to be by ourselves. We want to be more with our team. Or we could also just be like high ground tier would be good, because if they dive us, we just plop down to them and we're there. Off on our own is not where we want to be. Now, off on our own does become a lot better if they are not on something that can get to us instantly. But in any case here, this is probably just bad positioning. It's a little bit out in the open. It's very close to them. Being top left here would be just a little bit better. And I'd probably say the best place we could be would be like top right, like right here.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't give us good visibility for the moment, but we can see them as they're walking through, like right through this angle. Right, we can land dynamites, and then all we have to do is just like they're about to walk inner line of sight here in this moment. Like we just wait a second. Right now, we can see Winston and Junkrat. So it's not going to be too long before we can see people. So we just want to make sure we're putting ourselves in a more survivable position, in a position where we can see things better and do more things. Okay. So there, we just kind of, in that position, it's just a little bit easier for him to get on us. Make sure that you're paying attention to your health bar, right? So when we see that we take damage, right, because first off, we see that Junkrat is shooting at us. We see that he boops us with his mines twice. On our screen here, we see right above our crosshair, there's a red indicator. We see our health bar ticking down. We hear our character like groaning and moaning.
I don't think I ever really, I didn't, that like the red thing by the reticle, actually, yeah, Is that like indicating a certain amount of health or something
That
like
is
that, or
that is indicating the direction for which it came
the
from.
direction?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I never paid attention to that
Mhm.
before. Okay,
Yep. So we could maybe see that here. So when he throws it above us, you can also see at the very top of our screen is a bunch of red damage there, right?
yeah,
So there's a bunch of indicators that's saying we're being damaged from above or forwards. Okay. Um, and then we see it above our crosshair as well. So we have a ton of different indicators that we're taking damage, right? 25 HP right now. We're glancing at our health bar. We also we hear our character, what do you call it, like moan, right? And then we
yeah,
see
yeah.
at the corners of our screen, we see we're red. All right, all indications we're pretty much 1 HP here. And at this point, what we want to be doing is pressing I need healing, right? That should be bound
Yeah.
default to X, but it's also, you can, if you don't have it bound, I'd probably recommend it. I need
Okay.
healing tells your supports, hey, I'm over here, look at me, right? My name is Ash, I'm behind you, right? It basically gives them an in-game audio cue to where you're located. Press it a couple times if you need to, and if they're not looking at you, if it's safe at least, walk in front of them so they see you, and if they're absolutely not paying attention to you at all, or you're already close to one, you can go and grab a health pack, right? We just want to make sure that we're taking actions to get our health back up, because here we back off, and then we just kind of sit here with 25 HP, which means that if anything touches us, we die.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, you can see kind of more of our approach here with crosshair placement, right? We turn the corner, right? We're aiming at the floor, come up against these guys, and we're aiming at their knees, right?
Probably a bit too close to, yeah.
Yep, yeah, you can maybe like stay in the doorway a little bit more, that way you can very easily back up around the corner. The other thing is that you notice, again, the hesitation before we're engaging, right? We could have started shooting at them the second that we turn the corner here, right?
Okay.
We could be scoping in here, start shooting at them, but we wait a couple seconds, right? We wait, right? We wait, right? And then we engage, right? Just very, very delayed.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Much better. I'm being attacked. Let me get you patched up.
Right? Gotta be careful with this when we know that they have some dive characters, right? Again, pay attention to their team comp. The first thing every single game that we should be paying attention to, the number one important thing at the very beginning of the game, is what characters are they running, and what characters are our team running, because both team comps will dictate how we're playing. We could make this exact same play and it be completely fine if they did not have a monkey and a wrecking ball, right?
Got it. Okay.
So this would be completely fine if they didn't have those, but they do, which means that now we end up almost dying. Then we got away with it, but just because a mistake is not punished doesn't mean it's not a mistake. If we
Uh-huh.
were in silver, if we were in gold, they probably killed us because they were paying attention a little bit better.
Got it.
And make sure we're paying attention to our health bar again, because again, we're 109. We can grab the mini health pack right here real quick. We can request healing. Just want to make sure we're not sticking at low HP. So again, another note on awareness. There are a lot of things that go into awareness, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There is watching, specifically I'll go over the ones that seem like they need a little bit more work on than others. So far, paying attention to health needs work. I don't think you need to, I think ability usage is actually one of the stronger suits that we have. Ultimate usage, I've only seen us use one single Bob, so I don't really know too much about how we're paying attention to that.
Yeah, but
Yep.
ultimate is not been available. Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd probably say that like across most of our HUD, we're good except for our health bar. Like the health
Okay.
bar is the only thing on our HUD that we need to pay attention to. So far, I haven't needed to talk too much about watching kill feed, though that is usually something I talk with a ton of people about. That might come maybe in a different session when if it came up at all. But for now, it's not too much of a problem. But I'd probably say health bar watching, and then watching in game the players around you, right? So paying attention to the location of our team and the enemy team. That's going to be a major one, is paying attention to those guys while we're in game. That comes from making sure while we're in game that we're not just staring straight forwards and doing kind of a slow pan turn all the time, and we're just kind of barely looking around. We want to make sure that we're looking left, we're looking right, we're doing a 360 once in a while, checking what's up with our teammates, right? We want to make sure that we're not kind of tunnel visioning in on certain characters, or we want to make sure that we're paying attention to where everyone's at. Another thing when it comes to awareness is paying attention to team comps, like we talked about. So press tab. Tab's going to be very helpful to press. A good habit to get into is to press tab at least once in between every single fight. All right.
Okay.
That gives you a bunch of information. It tells you, did they swap any characters? And like we said, team comp dictates playstyle. So if they swapped characters, that's important information. Did our team swap characters? What ultimates do we have to work with? That gets a... No, to be honest, that one's not going to be too important for our rank. That gets more important at higher ranks. And then on the last thing for awareness is just making sure you're keeping your audio awareness up and listening to the footsteps, listening to abilities and ultimates, and when people are around us. And if you need to, you can just turn it up. But right, I'm at 20% now. I usually have this at 100. But then the other thing is just making sure that you're really paying attention to them.
Okay.
All right. Now we are nearing the end here, so what we're gonna do now is do a quick review of everything we talked about. On top of that, the main... Actually, you know what? You ordered the notes, so sorry. I'm a little bit newer with doing kind of this process. I'm trying to implement this. So what we'll do is, instead of doing a full in-depth review, we'll just do a quick kind of main points, what you want to work on at the very end here. So we'll going back into this for like another 2-3 minutes or so here.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, it's been super helpful, because I kind of wasn't sure what to work on other than like sort of everything, but I didn't realize which mistakes were like the biggest ones. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So we are right around here. So you'll notice that we just kind of do a wide peek here, where again rather than staying right here where we can see Baptiste, right? Only Baptiste can shoot back at us. Or just doing a little bit more of a peek, right? Instead, we're doing a wide peek where now every single member can shoot at us. It takes us a little bit longer to get back around the corner, right?
Yeah.
So just be careful with our positioning here. Make sure as well that we're paying attention to our health bar. I like that you open up with the dynamite, though. Good job grabbing the health pack. And then we're dead, right? So that was mainly a positioning thing, and then that got us that low health.
That was not in the plan.
Yep, most deaths are going to come down to either positioning or awareness, or a combination of both. And then you also get, and then a lot of them will also be like how we'll come into like aggression, of like how aggressive are we being, how passive are we being. Sometimes you can be too aggressive. All right, a whole lot of doing nothing again, right? This is time where we could be doing what you call spamming and just getting ult charge going, throw in some dynamites, get some shots in there. Just more time where we're just kind of not really doing much, right? We're just kind of chilling in place, right? We could be just looking to shoot at stuff, but we're kind of not really doing much, right? You see our teams doing that; they're poking. Just want to look to do that a little bit earlier on.
Okay.
And more just kind of crosshair placements, not really being on target there. Okay, don't look at dynamite. Don't stare at dynamites too long. If you throw it and it's no longer effective, just ignore it, right? If you misplace it, if you see that it's nowhere near anyone, which in this case it's nowhere near anyone, right? You can see the explosion radius of that.
Yeah.
All right, make sure you're not focusing on it too long. Okay, now we're near the end of the session, so we're gonna do a quick main points. I'll get you all the kind of recap stuff in the notes, but main points to work on. All right, so ability usage, not really a thing too much. We talked about a little bit. We're on Ashe. We talked about a little bit, so there'll be a few things, but honestly, probably the one that we need the least amount of work in. Then ultimates, I only saw one single ult, and it looked pretty decent. So again, probably one of the lower areas to work on. But it could definitely, you know, if we got into another session and we saw more ults, and then all of a sudden they were trash, well, you know, then that might be a point. But just from what I've seen, it isn't really a thing that needs to be worked too much on. But again, there's some areas where, of course, we just want to get consistent with it. Just some areas that we want to look at to fix. Then we have three kind of categories left. We have mechanics, positioning, and awareness. Now, these are the three main big ones, right?
Okay.
I would probably say that, let's see, these ones are very close in kind of the rankings of which ones you want to work on first. So, to be honest, it's not going to matter too much which one you work on first. Just make sure you're not going over like all three all at once and trying to focus on too much at once.
Okay.
But yeah, like if I were to put something on it, I'd probably say that mechanics is going to be number one. And with the mechanics, I probably say actions per minute would be a part of that. And
Okay.
actions per minute is probably going to be one of the biggest things that you could change here to up the effectiveness that you have. Is just make sure that you're doing things, right? Because too many times are we just not really doing much, and then that means that we're not really being too effective. We're taking too many pauses. There's times where we're not putting damage in. You want to be constantly outputting damage so we can get our ult going, so we can get kills, damage. There's not really a time where you want to pause. In all of Overwatch, there is no downtime. There's no such thing as a time where you're doing absolutely nothing, because there's always something to do. Now, there might be some times that that'll get super advanced, like when you start talking about some of that. But for the most part, just know you're trying to do stuff all the time.
Okay.
So just make sure you're not hesitating. Make sure you're doing things, and that goes in with your awareness on top of just the big one of making sure you're keeping crosshair placement. Then from there, I would probably say awareness is number 2, and then positioning is number 3, with probably say, you know, ults and ability usage coming in at kind of the last place there, number 4. But to be honest, the top 3 there could be interchangeable, especially I'd probably say awareness and positioning being very, very close to each other. All right. Any questions about anything we've gone over?
No, that was super helpful. Thanks. So it's good to know my ability usage. It's keeping me in bronze. Like I haven't sunk to like whatever is below bronze yet, so that's good.
Yep. All right. So then what's gonna happen now is I just ended